Hello, welcome to Frameline 45, the San Francisco International LGBTQ+ Film Festival. I am Allegra Madsen, she, her, hers. I'm the director of programs, and I am absolutely excited to present this Frameline Talks panel sponsored by Variety, Youth on Screen. The first, I'm going to hand it to Jude Dry from IndieWire. Thank you.
Thanks, Allegra, and thank you, Frameline, for having me. Very excited to be here and to introduce our amazing panelists. We've got a great group for you, so why don't we start with Crystal?
Hi, I'm Crystal Moselle, she, her. I have a show called Betty. It's on HBO, season 2 coming out this year. And I made a film called The Wolf Pack and another film called Skate Kitchen.
So good. And we'll move on now to Daniel.
Hi, I'm Daniel Barnz. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I co-created Generation with my daughter, and I'm also the showrunner and director of many episodes.
And Jordan?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jordan Seamón. I am in the new HBO television show called We Are Who We Are, and my pronouns are she, they.
And last but certainly not least, Javicia.
Hi, my name is Javicia. I am in Batwoman, and my pronouns are she and her.
And I forgot to say it, Jude Dry, they, them, associate editor of IndieWire. So I'm so thrilled to have all four of you. It's such a great group. And I know the Frameline audience will be thrilled as well. All of your work deals with young people, and that's what this panel is about as well. So what I love about all your work is that it portrays young people on their level. It doesn't talk down to its characters, while still be engaging for older audiences, because I think a lot of times, older audiences haven't seen themselves reflected in television. And so they are drawn to watching stories. And it seems like, young people and shows that portray young people are where the most exciting queer stories are coming out of. So I'm curious for all of you, and maybe we can start with Crystal and Daniel as the creators, but how do you think about audience in terms of age and representation when you're making your work?
I can go if you want.
Great.
My work is so personal, and it's so much really focused on the people that I meet. So I don't really actually think about the audience. I'm thinking about the authenticity of the actual people I'm working with. So I think I'm drawn to these youthful people that inspire me because there's something about them that breaks boundaries, that I can feel them changing the world like in real time. And to me, like, the people that I work with are the audience, I guess. So that's kind of like the soundboard to everything I do.
Yeah, and I co-created the show with my daughter, who is a teenager, still a teenager. And so, we thought a lot about how to make the show feel kind of inside out, and just in all of the authorship and the directing and the writing, just to always make it feel like these were stories that were being told from Zelda's perspective and from the perspective of somebody who actually is a teenager. And I think it's interesting because I think, when we thought about our audiences, we were approaching it also from what Zelda felt like when she was an audience member, and what it felt like for her to watch other shows that featured young casts, and what it feels like when you're a teenager and you watch, teenagers being played by much older people who have really perfect bodies. And I think also for her as a queer teenager, she was really particular about wanting to focus stories on queer youth who would have stories that were connected to their sexuality, but also stories that were not connected to their sexuality. And she was also very sensitive, I think, to sort of stories that felt like they were, too much about queer bullying or something. And I think she felt like oftentimes when she saw queer teenagers and characters that their narratives were really defined by, bullying or coming out. So she really wanted to explore other things. So we were kind of thinking about audience, but only because Zelda herself was an audience member of these shows.
That's really interesting. And I guess since we're on this topic, all of you can speak to this question of casting. I mean, Crystal, I know that your work is so unique in that you work with non-actors, or I don't know what term you like to use if you're particular about that, but you sort of find people and then build the story around them.
I heard a good term for it the other day, first-timers.
First-timers. Nice.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that part of why your show and Daniel's show and the shows Jordan and Javicia are on feels so authentic is, because of that attention to casting and authenticity in casting. And especially when you're casting young people, you want newcomers, you want first timers. So I'm just curious about the casting process and what you think about when you're looking for people. Is it just purely instinct, or are you trying to build an inclusive world, or does that just happen naturally as the people that you find interesting?
You want to start?
I'll start. Purely instinct. To like so much that it's really about like I just have like this kind of spark that goes off when it's the right person, and I sort of build the characters around those people. So it's what I guess moves me as an artist. I think that I start with character first and then kind of build out from there. But I have been in other situations where we've written a character and then I have to cast an actor or somebody for that character, and that's actually difficult for me. But I think I'm getting better at it.
Yeah, we were. When we first were writing the script, we really wanted to make sure that our cast was as diverse as possible. And I think one thing that I've experienced working in Hollywood is that if you don't specify race in a script, then many executives will read that character as white. And we wanted to make sure that from the get-go, that people were reading these scripts and understanding that these were queer kids of color. And so that was one thing that, as we went into the kind of casting process, we were really specific about in terms of race and ethnicity, but also body type and vibe. And again, Zelda, I think as a teenager, we can watch shows about young people, and then you see older people playing them and you're like, yeah, they look a little old. But I think when you're a young person watching those shows, there are also these hidden messages of like, this is what your body should look like. This is how beautiful you should be. This is how confidently you should walk through life. And so one of the things that was really exciting about casting this show was sitting next to my daughter and having, who was in high school, and having actors walk into the room and, and having her be able to sort of vibe, does this feel like somebody I could be showing up to school with, or does this feel like somebody that I actually just see on TV? It was sort of exciting, and we were obviously looking for people who felt really real and authentic across the board.
That's an interesting segue into to bring in Jordan and Javicia, I think, because I know, Jordan, your character was not written as Black, and then they saw you and fell in love with you and maybe changed the script a little. What was that process like, and how involved were you with kind of, crafting the character once they had to rewrite a little bit?
Well, I like to think that I was heavily involved, just on making sure that the character was as authentic as they could possibly be. Yeah, that's true. My character was originally supposed to be mixed, Asian and Asian American, mixed with Black and Asian, and they met my parents, saw that both my parents were Black, and then changed the idea of the character, and we're able to have, I think, a lot more fun with the character because we were able to dive into a lot more deeper issues and a lot more interesting conflicts because we made the character fully African American.
And Javicia, you are the first Black Batwoman. Congratulations. I mean, obviously you probably went through, you've been asked by a lot about, what it means to do that. But I'm curious about your own experience with the character beforehand and kind of, how do you just slough off all the expectations and step into the role, or is it impossible to kind of forget that you're, breaking barriers as you're working?
I think in the beginning, obviously in my mind, what this meant played a huge part in my process. And I honestly had to have a conversation with myself and remind myself as an artist to step away from what this meant for everyone else and continue to service the character, continue to service Ryan and my Ryan life and every part of that. And like Jordan said, find every authentic moment that was necessary and that was possible without being bombarded by what it meant for everyone else. So that was the first part. And then I think as I went more into the script and into the season, my character being Black is a huge part of her storyline because you don't really get to see a lot of, the Black storyline in Gotham, honestly, especially when we are highlighting a moment in time where being Black is, I feel like it always is complicated, but being Black is truly highlighted as complicated right now. And so our show is addressing that. Our show is addressing how, the systematic racism, and we call them the Crows on our show, but they're basically another version of the police and things like that. So we're highlighting all of that. And to a certain extent, I think that there is something about, art imitating reality, but then also sometimes I'm just like, I want to have entertainment that doesn't include our blood being shed. So it's always this weird, really like thin line that we're walking and trying to be able to address the elephant in the room, but also trying to make sure that we still have fun with the creative process. And for me as an actor, it's just such a journey to learn how to really step away from my complicated feelings about everything that's happening in society and really service the world of just Gotham. And I think we're finding that. I think that this season we address it in a lot of different ways. And as the season progressed, we found more ways that felt authentic to not only the character, but to the idea that this is a superhero world. And we want to make sure that it still also has that element of fun and lightness to it.
I just wanted to read, you have a great quote in your New York Times interview, Javicia. You said, "You can't just hire one person and say you've done the representation. You have to make sure that one person is supported by a diverse writer's room, diverse stunt doubles, diverse stand-ins. It's a trickle-down effect." I think that's so brilliantly put, and also, clearly speaks to, how much work needs to be done, right? I mean, I know they had to find like the right stunt double for you and stuff like that. I guess how is the industry doing there? And is that kind of an extra layer when you or Jordan, go into work that you have to be aware of, that, you're sort of actively diversifying this very white industry?
I think that there's this thing that I always remind myself is that someone else opened the door for me, right? So someone else has already done all of the work to allow Batwoman to even exist. We can even just start off with someone more recent like Chadwick Boseman, who proved that there is a market for Black superheroes. I think that Black Panther showed that. Like the numbers showed it, the content showed it, the caliber of talent showed that there is a true market for Black superheroes. And so now it's my job to make sure that I keep that door open so that the next superhero can come and fill the next, the next void that's necessary to be filled in the whole like superhero world and acting world. What I found complicated as I started this job was that we did not have it wasn't easy to find a Black stunt double. It really was not easy. I wouldn't say it wasn't easy to find a Black stunt double. You got to remember, I film in Vancouver, so that plays a factor as well. We wanted to try to find Vancouver-based talent, not only creating job opportunities for Vancouver, but also just it's easier than to bring in someone that would have to come into a show that we only may need our stunt driver for episode 3 and 6 and 8. And so now this person has to stay here for a job that they may not work for every few months. So it was super difficult for our stunt coordinator to find a Black female stunt driver. But when I got hired, that was a huge part of the deal. A huge part of the deal was that we were going to make sure that this is represented on every end. So they did a lot of work and they really fought to find her, but it's not just in the stunt double world, it's also in the hair and makeup world. Coming onto a show that originally was cast as a white female lead, but it's not like the hair and makeup team changed and things like that changed. So to be able to continue to flow and to be able to know how to do different hair textures and learn how to do different, skin pigmentation and things like that, like that is a skill. And I think that with the hiring of more people of color and diversity, it's challenging all parts of our industry to step up and not to just, be able to do what they look like. I love my hair and makeup team and none of them are Black women. They're still white women, but they are so talented at what they do. And I feel completely supported and represented. But that's what this type of casting does. And I'm sure I can speak for everyone on this panel. Like this type of casting gives the opportunity for people in other parts of our industry to finally have an opportunity to play.
Jordan, anything you wanted to add to that?
I mean, you really handled it so beautifully. I feel like I can't even say anything else. I would definitely want to appreciate you mentioning hair and makeup and stuff. That kind of stuff was really important. And in any project that I do, and especially on We Are Who We Are, it was extremely important for me personally just to have someone who I knew could handle my hair texture and my hair coloring and all those other things. And we struggled for a while to make sure that the hair, especially because it was such a big part of my character, was done correctly and made sure that it was realistic and understandable because we had to make a wig and everything. But I think the industry is slowly but surely moving forward and making change. And I hope that I'm alive to see, the full greatness and how diverse and everything and amazing it is in the future. But I think we're trying, and I think people are taking responsibility and are saying, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to see. And I'm really happy that it's happening. And I'm happy that I got the chance to be a part of it. Being able to be that young Black person for someone else is really, really inspiring, and it feels great to get those DMs and get those messages from a young Black boy or girl or just a young queer teen in general, being able to, for them to see me on TV and be like, oh my gosh, I could do the same thing. That's really helpful to me. And I had people like that. And sometimes I had people like that. And then there were some people that didn't specifically look like me. So to be able to be that for someone is really cool. And I'm happy that the industry is taking the strides that it is.
Crystal and Daniel, I want to throw it over to you guys as, you have diverse writers' rooms, casts, I assume crew as well. how do you, and we're talking about opening doors. I mean, how do you see your role as a creator, someone with relative power? How do you think about those doors opening, and how much of a responsibility do you feel?
I mean, we felt a big responsibility in our show, and I think we set mandates for ourselves in terms of our crew, and I think it's true. Sometimes you have to work harder, right, to find people of color to fill positions because because of the way our world is, and that's just part of our job, is to work harder. I think we were blessed with a phenomenally diverse cast and crew and writers room, and and I think what we have to do when we're in those positions of power is create those checks and balances, so that we are acknowledging, figuring out our blind spots, and getting it right as much as we can. For our set, there was issues, questions, also because there were so many queer people on our show, in our cast, and so there's just a lot of work that you have to make sure is done, so that your trans actors aren't getting misgendered, and that people's correct pronouns are being used, and that your stunt doubles, and we went through the same thing on our show, that you're not making those sorts of errors of blindness. So I think it's not for me to say how our industry is doing, but I will just say, from from the perspective of our show, we are always encouraging everybody to be as honest with each other and with us at every moment, to figure out where we're getting it wrong, and how we can do better.
Okay. Okay, so I think we're about to go into a pre-room for the 3rd season, which it's not greenlit yet, but we have a pre-room. And we're staffing the rooms. The difference in diversity in the last 3 years has grown remarkably. It's amazing how many more diverse writers I'm able to find and speak with and give chances to. I think when I started the show, it was really about oh, sorry, we can't find anymore. There's no more. I'm like, what do you mean there's no? What are you talking about? There's 9 billion people on this planet. There's enough. We can find people. And I'm always pushing and pissing people off, because I will push until I get what I want in every avenue of this show and what I'm doing. And diversity, I want to rep the young women on our show, so that they feel so they're not looking out from set and seeing a bunch of white dudes. That's just not what any of us wants. And there's a level of comfort that we all find. For me, is when I'm surrounded by a bunch of women, I feel more comfortable. When I've been in several situations where there's a lack of trust that I've felt from working with people that aren't used to a woman being in charge. And I think that by default things are changing, because they have to. And I guess it's a sort of fake it to make it situation for a lot of people that aren't used to having people of color in charge and women in charge. And my entire team is made up of diverse women, and that's something that I mean, for me, is very important, because I want to represent all of us that are on the show. So I think things are changing slowly. There's always this backtrack. I just lost 3 commercials to white dudes, and that's upsetting. I think that there has to be a push to help people that have less experience to really push them over the finish line and give them a bit more chances, so they can get these things on their reels or whatever it is. Because I think when you're almost good enough, but the white man's a little bit better than you and they get the chance, I think, like, and you just constantly stay here, I think that's unfair. Like, we have to make the effort. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Crystal, because I think, a lot of times, and at least recently, it seems like everything is moving forward and we have all these great queer characters and women directors and people of color on TV. And then, I always find it really fascinating to hear from people in the industry what's actually going on behind closed doors. So yeah, I'd be curious.
There's still a lot of fighting. There's still a lot of like, I feel like I'm stepping over my boundaries constantly and pissing people off. But I mean, I'm not going to stop,
Good. I hope you don't stop. Yeah, it's anyone else. I'm curious if anyone else wanted to add about just sort of where the industry is falling short right now for you in particular or in general, and maybe as kind of a wrap up question, where you hope to see it go in the future.
Well, I just do want to say something to Crystal. I love that you coined them first timers. You're doing that because it takes someone giving someone a chance in order for them to be the next either big thing or the next person to open up doors for people. And I think that this industry can be very repetitive, and they can hire the same teams and hire the same actors and hire the same directors, and you're just hearing the same stories. And at the end of the day, entertainment is what it's like, that's how the world sees us. The reason why people view certain ethnicities or genders a specific kind of way is because of entertainment. And so even though it's entertainment and it should be fun and it should be imaginative, there should be some type of knowledge that comes from it, where it's like you're getting this moment to be able to jump into the world that you've never seen before. And there's shows that, thank God they happened, that I was able to see a perspective that I never saw before. And it took someone saying, you know what, I know this is new, I don't know how it's gonna do, but I wanna give it a chance, and I'm willing to give it a chance. And sometimes what I'm learning about the industry is the show or project or movie may not be huge when it first comes out, and it takes some time for it to really get its footing and its traction and its true I guess exposure. But what I love as a woman that probably fits a lot of different categories of diverse, I can go on television, or I can go on an app, I can go on all these streaming platforms and find content that I feel connected to or that I want to learn about that I may not have even heard of before. So I just want to say kudos to you, to all of you, for constantly creating outside of the quote unquote norm, because it's such an opportunity to be able to learn from.
I mean, I think just to also to build on that too, I think, one thing that I'm really interested in seeing, kind of develop is that more actors feel comfortable, identifying as queer. We ended up being phenomenally lucky with our cast, because, you can't, of course, legally ask somebody if they're queer when you cast them. And it was something that was important to us, not only that we would have diversity in terms of race and ethnicity, but also in terms of gender identification and sexuality. And I think one thing that's been kind of amazing with our show, just as I've watched it roll out, is to see how comfortable many of our cast is talking about their the way that they identify across the gender and sexuality spectrums. And I think it's something that I'd like to see more of, because it was such a stigma for a while, right? I mean, if you were a queer actor, then that's how you became defined. And I think the thing that's amazing about Gen Z right now is that they are constantly breaking down boundaries. And that's one that I'd love to see us continue to push.
Jordan, did you want to add anything?
Gosh, everyone's saying such amazing things there. I mean, clearly I hope we get even more diversity in the types of stories that we're able to tell. I specifically, being only 18, I hope that we can have more shows that are showing like young people specifically. Clearly I love watching shows that there's like 24 and 30-year-olds playing teenagers, but it's really, really nice and it's really comforting. Like Mr. Daniel said, seeing a 16-year-old actually play a 16-year-old, and it helps you feel so much more comfortable in your body, and you are able to get some more realistic expectations into the kind of things that you're going to expect from when you grow up. I remember growing up and watching these older people play younger ages. And when I got to that age, I expected myself to just be this total model-esque type person. And I wasn't exactly what I thought that I was going to be. And I really hope that we get to see more stories that elaborate on the young mind and give a lot more young people a chance. I'm super happy to be a part of just this newer generation that's really taking charge and trying to do new things. Seeing younger directors and younger writers and young diverse crews and casts and stuff, I think it's just amazing, and I can't wait to see how much more it expands in the future.
That was a very optimistic note to end on, perhaps. Maybe we should leave it there. Thank you so much to our panelists, Crystal, Daniel, Javicia, and Jordan. I'm such a fan of all of your work, and I hope you continue to get to make whatever you want in the future. And thank you to Frameline for having us all together.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.